Hey everyone, this is Skoober Steve. I've just got back from Bali. Sunday I flew in, been there a couple of months doing some great diving. I lost my hat, so I had to get a new one. Local hat, which $15 down the gurgler. I am here doing a presentation on a little bit about tech diving, and I know there's a lot of people out there that are in the early stages of their diving development. And I'm going to try and make this as interesting as possible so that you can see the scope of diving and what the possibilities are. Now, tech diving is not for everyone, and we'll kind of cover some salient features. It won't be too difficult, so just follow along. And here we go. I'm doing this in the context of my own diving history and how I began tech diving back in 2014. My very first trip to Truck Lagoon. I enjoy that location. I've been back 3 times. So I'm going to incorporate some of those slides in here. But this is what we're going to look at. I've done my introduction, so we're going to look at the origins of technical diving. So how did it come about? And some of the early developments of mixed gas and all that sort of thing. Historical developments, some definitions. So what is technical diving? What are the trends in technical diving? And I'll finish up some questions at the end, and we'll see how we go. So first and foremost, you've all been TV buffs watching television over the years, and you'd see this guy, Lloyd Bridges, and what was the show? Sea Hunt, exactly. And he was the character called Mike Nelson, diving off the Florida Keys, and there were many episodes in the 60s of this guy. Over here is
Jacques Cousteau.
Oh yeah, you got it. Yeah, perfect. So he was basically, him and a counterpart invented the Aqualung, which was first it was a hose. The main regulator was on the back, and we had a regulator that came on the front through a single hose. Who's this guy? Anyone know who he is? Very famous, Yucatan Peninsula.
Shaq?
Shaq. This is Shaq himself. So if you're a cave diver, and I'm down in the mount at the moment, so Shaq has been here, and some people from Mount Gambier have been very privileged to spend time with Shaq. He didn't have to do a CDA course. All right, he wrote Caverns, Measureless to Man, Taming of the Slough, all sorts of cave diving material that has basically culminated in cave diving courses and curriculum. So, pretty smart man. We may not know this guy. And unless you're a big fan of Florida diving and the Andrea Doria off the coast of Montauk or New Jersey, some people will recognise him as Gary Gentile. Again, this guy, if we put him in the context of wreck diving versus cave diving, this guy equates to this guy. He did most of the recoveries off the Andrea Doria of, what have we had now, 19-ish new passengers that have joined the Andrea Doria post its sinking in the late 50s, mid to late 50s. Let's carry on. A little bit of history of technical diving. I'm just going to pick out a couple of these that we're going to talk about. So, the development of stage decompression and those sort of techniques, Haldanian methods, mixed gas and that sort of thing. This one's going to be really interesting to a lot of people. This has happened in the era of the Second World War. So the first successful rescue, excuse me, of a submarine that had been compromised and gone down to 240 feet or whatever that is, 60, 70 metres. 1953, we had air tables. 1952, we had Dr. Albert Buhlmann working with Hans Keller, looking on sequence diving, stage diving with mixed gas, and believe it or not, in 1952, a 1,000-foot dive or 330 metres. And we think about that today and think, wow, like even Harry and the wet mules who are doing Pierce Resurgence, they are not much deeper than this guy. All right, Hal Watts, he did a dive to 120 metres on air. So there was a lot of competition in the early days of this new level of technical diving, where people were looking for a bit of notoriety or pushing limits and creating the scene for the next generation. So going back here, the US Squalus, it was an American submarine. It had gone into trouble and had capsized. The forward compartment flooding, could not get back to the surface in about 240 feet. Now, there had been no successful rescue at this depth ever. And you got to remember, these guys, there was no aqualung available back then, so it was all surface supply, hard hat diving, Navy dress, Navy standard dress. So really interesting that these guys were able to pioneer the first ever bell system to latch onto the forward hatch to evacuate Navy seamen at that depth. So just some statistics about it. So it took 39 hours to recover 33 men with 4 bell trips up and down. No successful submarine rescues at that point beyond 60 feet. I will quote a film, and you've probably heard of this one with Cuba Gooding Jr., and I think it's got another well-known guy. You'll see it, but it's about Navy dress diving and doing rescues and salvage back in that era. Really interesting film, gives you a lot of perspective about hard hat diving and the early development of decompression diving, because you couldn't work for very long on air at depth before you had to do what they call staged decompression. And this was the foundation for where we are today.
One of the greatest rescues in the annals
I'll
of the sea.
let you just go through this.
Submarine Squalus.
I'll shut up for a minute.
There's the rescue ship Falcon with derricks, masses of equipment, and the diving bell rescue chamber. The submarine scope found the buoy indicating the sinking of the Squalus. The rescue chamber aboard the Falcon, ready to be lowered to the submarine, which lies on the bottom in water 240 feet deep. Its position is marked by that buoy, which is a guide to the diver. He descends to work with the rescue chamber when it is lowered. Deep in the sea there, 33 men are alive, in danger of dying for lack of air. 26 perished when the Squalus sunk. Yet the living out is the cry as down goes the diver. The crew of the rescue chamber climb in for their risky adventure. Never before has a diving bell like that been used for actual rescue. Will it work? And at that depth? The idea is to lower it onto the sunken sub, make it fast to a hatch, open the hatch, and bring the survivors up into the rescue chamber. So beneath the surface it sinks, for life-saving without precedent. The weight, the suspense. Aboard the rescue fleet, they can only hope. Are survivors right now climbing into that life-saving apparatus? The diver comes out. What's the word? Pull up the rescue chamber. There it is, bubbling and breaking the water. The dramatic sight, sudden appearance of the diving bell. This occurs a little more than 24 hours after the United States submarine Squalus sank while making a practice dive off Portsmouth. A valve failed to work, and water poured in. Men trapped in the sunken coffin. All the rescue power of the Navy mobilized. And here's the climax. The rescue chamber coming up from its first descent. Hoisted up. What's in it? There are anxious wives and families waiting tensely. Open it up. And then out they climb, surviving. The first one, so weak he has to be helped after being entombed for 24 hours at the bottom of the sea. One after another, 7 in all are brought up in this first trip of the rescue chamber. It will take 4 trips in all before the 33 survivors are brought safely to the surface. This scene repeated 4 times over a period of 12 hours, but the rescue is achieved. Every one of the living brought out alive. In the history of the sea, a sunken submarine represents the depth of terror and horror. So this rescue represents a height of glory.
All right.
One of the greatest rescues in
You
the
have to do some editing here.
Sure.
From the sunken submarine Swallows off Portsmouth, New Hampshire. There's the rescue ship Falcon with derricks, masses of equipment, and the diving bell rescue chamber. The submarine found the buoy indicating the sinking of the Swallow. The rescue chamber aboard the Falcon, ready to be lowered to the submarine, which lies on the bottom in water 200.
Pretty cool for what year was it?
1939.
Phew.
Amazing, yeah?
The guide to the diving.
Yeah, just pause it there until I get the next slide up. Alright, so you can see that was a really interesting development, and remember this was back in 1939 at the start of the war. Some other guys, and this is a bit further down the track, this is in the early 50s, 1952, and we're just starting to work with some formulas for gases, and this was development of trimix diving. And you'll see this young guy here, a very young Haynes killer, working with Dr. Albert Bullman, and they're doing bell dives at down to 1,000 feet, 330 meters, and you can just hear the chatter inside the big oil companies like Shell, who were thinking about, wow, we can get some guys on the bottom of the ocean to work on well rigs, and that is going to be very profitable for us. And so companies like Comex, which is the big bell diving company and mixed gas company out of France and Norway, they did lots of North Sea development on undersea oil wells. All right, so this was Hans in his whole setup there. They'd gone down in this bell here, pressurized, all surface supplied with mixed gas. So he walked out, left the bell, did a short walk, and a bit like the moon landing, if it ever happened, and they dropped a flag in the sand and returned back to the bell. And then when he got back to the bell, he had to open his faceplate so that the mixed gas inside the bell could be respirated by the diver. He had a buddy with him that when he saw Hans pass out because the gas was hyperoxic, and he later regained consciousness, but his partner in the bell left his face shield closed and subsequently died on that dive. A bit sad, but anyway, they worked out what was survivable in terms of gas and what was a problem. So getting back to the rest of some history, here's some notable things that happened. So from 1952 we had lots of development, but really in terms of technical diving, it wasn't until 1986 that we had a chap called Dick Rakowski, and he developed the International Association of Nitrox Divers, IAND, which then turned into IANTD, International Association of Nitrox and Technical Divers. Then just a year later than that, and you would have thought rebreathers were much later on the scene. But we had Dr. Bill Stone, who, working with a lot of other divers, came up with the old CIS Luna Mark 1. And they used that in what was called the Wakala Springs project. We're going to see a bit further on from that. 1991, some 4 years on, we had a magazine which was absolutely a blast in the technical diving scene by a guy called Mike Menduno, who is back now working with GUE TV, and he just put together Rebreather 4 and 4. And I do advocate, if you're into technical diving, or you're just on the cusp of maybe going down that path, or you're just interested in what it's about, GUE TV and Rebreather 4 and 4 have got all of the latest Malta episodes, and they've streamed them on GUE TV, and there's some great stuff there. It's not just for rebreather divers. This is pertinent right through divers who are just entering the technical scene right up into that level. 1991, we had Key West Divers, which was founded by Billy Deans, and he was doing the first open circuit training for helium divers. And we've got to remember, like, this was the period that sport divers were starting to dive the Andrew Doria. And we'll look a little bit at the books and the stories that came out of that area of diving the Andrew Doria, and also the U865, which is a submarine discovered by John Chatterton and compatriots around him. 1994, we set ironed the International Association of Nitrock Divers. Then we had Tom Mount and Brett Gilliam form a new group, and this is where TDI came from. 1994 TDI formed. Brett Gilliam was a Navy diver. He did one of the deepest air dives at 143 metres, 145 metres, and still able to be cognitive and do complex mathematical equations underwater at that depth. Pretty amazing.
Due to helium?
Brett Gilliam.
With helium?
No, just air.
Just
air
air.
diving. Straight air diving. All right. So these are some of the guys that did deep air dives, and that's what it was about, getting a bit of notoriety. Tom Mount, and he's the guy that did the CIS Luna, went to 110 metres in 1965. You think, that's a long time ago. I mean, I was only 2 years old then. Hal Watts, 1967, 120. Neil Watson, 133 metres. Sheck, the great Sheck, in 1971, 142, over in the Zacutan Peninsula. And then, Brett Gilliam, who's incidentally ill at the moment, and they're kind of looking at hospitalisation and whether or not he's going to carry on with us in the living in the next few months. But 1993, 145 metres on air. Pretty amazing. We'll just go over this quickly. 1987 was the Wakala Springs project, where they set up a big diving balloon. This creature here was the first dual rebreather created by Bill Stone and his group, and the CIS Luna Mark 1. And here's a picture of Sheck in his favourite red wetsuit. Everyone knew it was Sheck when they saw him in this suit. And he tested the CIS Luna Mark 1 prototype rebreather December 11th, 1987. This weighed a whopping 205 pounds, 93 kilos. The unit was considered portable at that time, where, I mean, I wear a JJ rebreather now and it's 18.5 kilos. And that feels like two twins on the back of my back, fully loaded. The unit had an outrageous range and was fully redundant, meaning it was a dual rebreather system. So shortly before this dive in Wakala Springs, Bill Stone used the rig to conduct a 24-hour dive in the Wakala Basin, same location. Only one half of the rig was used for this dive, meaning that you could actually dive for 2 days on it. This is where a lot of things were developed in rebreather technology. Here we go. Here's a very young Mike Manduno. He doesn't look much different now, and he's still the same exuberant guy, and he's still doing a lot for technical diving, and particularly for the rebreather forums that we just had the rebreather forum for in Malta. So he started the Aquacorp's publication, which was an American-based publication, and people flooded to it because technical diving became this insatiable thing that everyone wanted to enter into.
Popular?
Became very popular. And sport divers, it was an era where sport divers were flooding to this new level of diving, and it was mostly conducted out of Florida. Naturally, there was a lot of testing, a lot of new ground that was broken, and usually when that happens, there are a few, mishaps, incidents, and understandably a few fatalities. I can remember this Tec Deep program, which was brought out by Paddy in 1999. They were way behind the game because TDI already had formed in 1994. DEMA was still a very big diving conference, and even things like nitrox or enriched air. Paddy was very, very against it and said, "Well, you're just going to kill people." And so this is how, back in that time, 1991, Drew writes an article, have we missed the boat? Everyone's miles ahead of Paddy. And, I've got to say the biggest organisation in the world for recreational diving, they probably did leave things a little bit late to get into the technical diving game. I myself, I was a Paddy Tech instructor, but the material, even though it's still relevant today, it's very wordy, it's very clunky, and one of the first guys I taught a Paddy program, Tech program to, was Danny Pettybridge, if you know him. But yeah, he actually enjoyed the program and got a lot out of it, and now goes on to be a TDI diver, Trimex and all that. Let's carry on. Some of the 1992 technical diver fatalities, basically all recorded diving out off the Florida Keys. And I would advocate, if you're in technical diver mode or you're thinking about getting that way, is some of these stories, they'll teach us a lot about the early development of technical diving, the early pioneers, and those that gave us the lessons and the information that we need today, that we have today. This was my favourite read by far, which is Diving the Andrew Doria. It started with the Doria being sunk in the late 50s, mid to late 50s, Jacques Cousteau being the first diver on it, and then the early sport divers, and even the guy that owned one of the department stores in Germany, setting up a program to recover the safes. Peter Gimbel, and he was the one that cut this hole. You can just see that hole there in the port side, diving down to retrieve the safes. Bill Nagel, very avid diver, very adequate diver at that time. Brought up all the China, first class China, pretty much, on his boat called the Seeker. There was a lot of rivalry between this guy, Bill Nagel, and Steve Belinda, the skipper of the Wahoo. which were the two boats that went regularly in a very short window, sort of around July every year, out to dive the Doria. These guys met each other, Richie and John Chatterton, Richie Collar. They're still active technical divers. They discovered, or through Bill, identified this shipwreck, which was a German submarine off of the Jersey coast in the late 90s, by the time they had discovered by penetrating the rear electric drive section and recovering some parts which identified the sub as U869. These guys here were father and son. Here's the book, The Last Dive by Bernie Chowdhury. A very good read. Sad ending, of course. Both of these guys became fatalities diving this U869. Basically came out of the wreck diving air at 70 metres, not recommended, and maybe through narcosis, unable to find their stage cylinders to do their decompression and get to the surface. Chris Senior died on the surface. Chrissy Junior, it took him about 16 hours of excruciating pain. He made it back to the chamber on the mainland, but didn't survive that either. Alright, so you're already probably intrigued. What is technical diving? It's very simple. I can just describe it like this: anything beyond single tank recreational diving. That's probably the easiest answer, but I'm going to get a bit more sophisticated. So it's a suite of skills, equipment and procedures that allow divers to venture beyond recreational diving limits to plan and execute a dive mission appropriate to the competency and experience of the dive team. So that gives a pretty broad definition, but that's where we're going to base things on from here. So what's not tech diving? So diving outside of your recreational limits without the appropriate experience, equipment, skills and training. So I've had lots of experiences, and I've been one of them, where I've gone down to 60 metres plus on a single tank and returned. I'm still here, right? Breathing, living. Not the case for everyone. I say this to everyone, like anyone can dive deep, but it's how you return to the surface that counts. You're either in good shape, you're pretty wobbly, terribly bent, or you're a casket case. So single tank dives to 60 metres on air by an inexperienced diver are almost always going to create an incident which can result in diver injury or fatality. Just because you go out and buy the latest tech gear and don it, to show your friends how cool you are. And look, technical diving shit is cool. And you can look like the shit. But
black.
But the other thing is, you have to dive it right.
Yeah.
So wearing tech equipment doesn't make you a tech diver, and conversely, having completed a technical course is just part of the journey. Like, a certification is just a record of your training. All right. So whatever you've done training wise is just that. Let's have a look at a couple of diving scenarios. So we do have a wreck at this depth. It's called the AV Yolonga. It was a vessel that used to go from Kangaroo Island to Port Adelaide, shipping Adelaide, Brighton, cement, bits and pieces for the island. So 39 metres, we think, is this a recreational dive or a tech dive? Because we've got deep certs now for recreational divers that allow us to go to 40 metres. But then you think, how long have we got at 40 metres as a recreational diver? If you're diving air, you've probably got about 6 or 7 minutes, because you've got to count for your travel time and getting back up again, without doing a decompression dive, because recreational diving is no decompression diving. So I would probably put it in the category of technical diving. Here's the AV Yolonga. I'm just going to let you watch this and then we'll talk about it afterwards. This was shot by Dan Sprackman and it's yours truly as the dive model, if you hadn't guessed. Okay, so that was the AV Yolonga off of the coast of Yankalilla, about 17 k's west of that location. So we're going to go through doing a technical dive on that particular wreck. Yeah, this is my student Danny Petherbridge, and we were in truck, and this is the bridge of the Nippo, and this is technical diving heaven in Truck Lagoon. Alright, so doing a technical dive, we need to calibrate or account for three particular salient features. We need a dive plan, we need a gas plan, we need a decay plan. So a 30-metre dive to map a new wreck. We're going to do a bottom time of 40 minutes to complete the mission and objectives. Our gas plan, we need back gas. We're going to use air on this particular dive, 20%. And we're just going to deco on ENX 50 or Nitrox 50. So really simple. So now we look at, we're going to switch to that deco gas at 21 metres. And our run time is a total of 80 minutes. Our deco time is 40 minutes. So we spend roughly half the time getting to the wreck, staying on the wreck, getting back up to that 21 metres, and spending another 40 minutes hanging around in the water, thinking about things like great white sharks. Yeah, but that can be good. All right, we may even see one. Who knows? I have seen one. All right, so looking at what our gas requirements are, we need 3,900 litres of air. We need a little bit of fat in that. So diving 12.2 litres with 232 bar in them. We've got roughly 5,800 litres, so we've got plenty of room. We need 1,180 litres of 50%. We need more than that, obviously, so we can't do that on a 5.7 litre because we're going to breathe all that out. So we're probably going to have to do that on a 9 litre or something, or maybe an 11. Just use the residual gas somewhere else. That's the basic profile, so we get down to 39 metres reasonably quickly. If we're doing a direct descent down the anchor chain, it should take us maybe 2 or 3 minutes. You know, if we've done everything, done our checks on the surface, we might add a couple of minutes for a subsurface check at 5 metres. But anyway, we get down there and we spend mostly all of that 40 minutes on the bottom looking around. It might not be exactly 40, but we allow for that room to come up and down in the water column and survey the wreck. We spin up to our 21 metres, switch to our 50 mix, and you can see the profile, and spend another 20 minutes decompressing. You may say that's kind of boring. In blue water, it can be very soothing, very calming, as long as you don't see a great white shark. And yeah, that sort of thing. So we go, next question. So what about a 90 metre dive? And look, I realise that is probably out of the scope of most of us in the room. But we want to go and visit a wreck at 90 metres for 20 minutes. Firstly, we can't do it on air, all right? And the bottom mix breathing gas is going to be a Trimix 1360. So the regimen of this is 13% oxygen and 60% helium. So helium's quite a light gas, but it's also quite fast. So it goes into your tissues quite quickly and comes out quite quickly. We need travel gases because we need to get down to that point where we can breathe the 1360. So we're not going to breathe that all the way from the surface because we want to preserve some of that for the bottom part of our dive. So we're going to travel on 1840 and perhaps a little bit of 2333 on the way. We could change that. This is not an absolute blueprint. Some people might choose to just do it on the 1840. Some people might choose to do it on their 50-15, get down to 20 metres and switch to their bottom mix, their 1360. That's okay as well. It just depends on how you manage those gases, because helium's quite expensive. So, this is probably anywhere between $800 and $1,000 dive on open circuit. The same process, the dive plan, the gas plan, the deco plan, we go through that. Descend to 60 metres, switch to our 1360, continue to 90 metres, look around for 20 minutes. Wow, this is fantastic. And the clarity on helium, you're not going to be suffering from narcosis, so you can perform reasonably well, like a 20 metre dive at that depth. At 27 minutes, we begin the ascent to 60. At 120 minutes, we reach our first 5 metre stop, and then we continue to off-gas for almost another hour. So we surface almost 3 hours with a run time of 177 minutes. So it's going to be a long dive, so you want to be, well hydrated. Maybe take a little bit of, a couple of snacks that you can chew underwater, and be well rested and prepared for that dive. The gas numbers are huge, so we need 1840, 700 litres. You can see all that. We need lots and lots of gas to be able to do that. And here's our profile. So I'll start at the surface with our 1840, 1360, 20 minutes at the bottom, 1840, our 2333, and then our 50-15, and then our 02. And people might ask, why do we need all of these gases, and what's the difference in the helium? Very important. Once we start on helium and we start to infuse that into our physiology, we can't release it very, very quickly. So we've got to halve the amount of helium in the next mix so that we don't create a situation in our body that's called counter diffusion, where we've got nitrogen coming in, helium trying to escape, and there seems to be a big argument. We can suffer all sorts of things like nausea, maybe confusion, or something in our inner ear where it causes a destabilization, so not kind of like feeling competent in the water column. Here's a picture of Nathan. I don't know if any of you know Nathan Cummins. He's currently working for Saudi, about to go on a deep sea mission somewhere. This is yours truly. This is us at 80 metres in Pamaturan, North Bali, and we're doing a Trimix program with the late great Ben Walsinger, who disappeared in late September 2018. Here's some diving scenarios. Now, a lot of people in the room have probably done. Who's done the President Coolidge?
Woohoo!
Oh, yeah, it's a great dive. People go there, and there used to be 3 operators there. There was Coral Keys. Who was the old guy that was there? What was his name? Shoot, I can't remember that. I've got a fading brain. But currently, there's one operator. It's Jack Powers. Power, not related to Alan Powers, right? Who was Alan Powers, who opened up the whole region for diving the Coolidge. He did lots of great things for that region and opened up that for diving. So we think, is this a recreational or tech dive? Well, I've done it both ways. I've been there 2 times now, 2016 and 2018, and it's a wreck at 21 metres on the bow, and if you go right down to the stern, it's about 60. There is so much to see on this wreck. It is probably one of the premium wreck dives of an ocean liner in the world. I mean, there's maybe the Britannic, but that's at 110 or 120 metres. There's the Lermontov, which is in the Sounds in New Zealand, which is 30 to 35 metres, but again, a very big wreck. And here are some of the features on there. This was a picture taken by none other than Dr. Harry. This is a buddy of mine who came into the shop, Divers Delight, back in, I think it was about 2014, with his partner. And here he is sitting on the rudder, or about to sit on the rudder of the Coolidge. And notice this is the shaft for the prop. So he turned around and sat on the rudder, and I've just got this photo here. And by the time I got to him, he was just sort of staring vacantly into space at about probably 67 metres there. Pretty narked. Of course, this is the famous lady. I've kissed the lady a few times, you know, kind of like, if you're a really cool person now, you just kiss the horse's ass. Because it's a unicorn, right? It's just missing the beak. Okay, just to go off on a little bit of a discovery about how we all think in the room. US Navy is testing a new smart biogenetic drug for scuba diving enhancement. Pretty interesting, right? Mm-hmm. So the manufacturer of this drug claims that it increases awareness and thought processes. That could be good, right? Mm-hmm. It increases gas distribution. That could also be good. It increases motor skills and muscular efficiency. Also good. It decreases narcosis. Yeah. Fantastic. It decreases the standard decompression schedules. Now, this is a wonder drug, right? It decreases the incidences of decompression illness. All right, if this drug was approved and commercially available, would you consider obtaining it to dive on? Okay, so I'm going to just leave that thought for a minute. Reflecting on that, okay, I'm going to look at this as this is something that's prevalent in our era at the moment. Instant society syndrome. All right, so we'll all have instant coffee, instant this, instant that. All right, so we all want the best possible outcome for the least outlay or input in the shortest amount of time. It's kind of a trend in people, right? How does this relate to technical diving? Who has ventured beyond the limits of their training? Well, I know I have. Yeah. And did anything untoward occur? Now I'm going to tell you, the previous slide was a hypothetical test. All right, to see what we might do, what we might be enticed to do. And these are some of the issues that we learned from, this is the shuttle, the Challenger, allegedly, that went up into space. And normalization of deviance is when it's the gradual process through which when an unacceptable practice or standards become acceptable. Because nothing went wrong. So we thought, okay, well, maybe we'll just wear that, and because nothing inadvertent happened. And so as the deviant behaviour is repeated without a catastrophic result or without anything negative, then it becomes the social norm, or socially acceptable for either the organisation or the group or association. Here's another one very common in technical diving: temporary motivation corruption paradigm. So no diver consciously decides that they're going to have an accident or fail to return to the surface. So we've got an incident here in Australia that happened some years ago. So Phil Gray, he's a fatality. He was on a Revo that was bought from a guy called Steve Selbach, who lives just down in Noongar, and he decided he was going to take the cells, the oxygen cells, out and give it to another diver on a Revo unit, and put his old cells back in his unit to complete a program with 2 students. Now, you can tell what happens, alright? You're like, Phil is under the water, his controller is going off its tits, going, we got too much cell drift, we can't accurately know what the oxygen content in the loop is. And if you're a rebreather diver, and I apologise to those of you who aren't, but we must know what we're breathing. It's a bit like gambling on what's in a tank. If we don't go and test our nitrox mix, because someone can mess up, and we may not have a 32 mix that we thought we had. It could be air. It could be even higher. But you can imagine if we dived a 32 mix on the Hobart and it was only air, what's that going to do to our tissues? What's that going to do to our body ladder? Alright, so other interesting guys, I mean, you can read about this guy on the net. Look up this guy, Guy Garman. He was called Dr. Deep. He was diving out of the Caribbean. He created this whole club, the 100 metre club. And, they had this whole ego thing that you weren't a real diver until you dived to 100 metres. So, David Shaw, another great story. If you haven't read his book, Raising the Dead, it's a great story. It's got so much information in it, and I was only talking recently to one of his support divers, Johan Boshoff in Bali, and so much insight into that. Stuff that is not revealed in the book about David's accident. Rob Stewart, the shark guy, who he was actually quite an accomplished diver. He was an instructor at TDI level, advanced nitrox and deco and beyond. And so when he was doing his rebreather training, and it wasn't his first rebreather cert, so he would have known that 3 deep rebreather dives in one day would have been bad for him. And so when he surfaced with his buddy, and his buddy went unconscious at the surface, they attended to him. And by the time they got him on the boat, Rob had already passed out and dropped down the water column and drowned. And then my mentor and really good friend Ben, who apparently had some signs of a maybe mild stroke before his incident. He was doing some research for some later diving to accommodate some rebreathers and deep technical divers, and he never returned from a 110 metre dive. Okay, prerequisites for technical diving. Here we go. So you need to be 18. I think that, are we all 18 in the room?
Just.
Yep, okay, we just there. Awesome. You've got to have the attitude and aptitude. It's not for everyone. You've got to be medically fit. A lot of the questions around technical diving are going to rotate around your own physiology. Are you up for it? It's quite task loading, and it can be hard on your body. You know, your current certifications, I'm going to say you need a little bit more than advanced open water, alright? I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass there. 30 to 50 log dives is an absolute minimum. You know, if I'm the instructor, I'm going to look for a little bit more than that.
Mm-hmm.
You need the appropriate equipment. I mean, obviously this guy here, I don't know where he dives, but you know, if you see anyone dressed in dive gear like that, wanting to start a dive course,
Penguin.
Just walk away.
Yeah.
If this is what your buddy looks like, you can guarantee that you're going to see him in the news.
Yeah.
All right. You need an understanding of what you're getting into. You need a willingness to learn. You know, a lot of people these days are a little bit gung-ho, a little bit egocentric, and think they know a lot already. If you've got the right instructor, that's going to be beaten out of them pretty quickly. And you really need a mentor. You really need someone who's you can use as a sounding board.
Skoober Steve.
Go, yeah, look, I can give you some salient pointers occasionally.
Got to be honest, right?
Yeah, and you do. You have to be brutally honest. I mean, I'm maybe not too brutal, but you know, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. All right. What Tec Diving teaches you, it teaches you protocols and procedures, equipment selection, application, teamwork, self-sufficiency. I'm going to say that because one of the interesting things about a technical dive is if you get buddy separation or anything happens underwater in your team, you may be the one that has to finish the dive alone. You know, maybe some distance from the rest of your team.
A drift dive or something. Yeah.
You need redundancy, or you need to understand redundancy and contingency. You need to plan and execute a dive plan. Like it needs to be on the money, because you go too far off that. It's not like getting in your car and driving up to Woolworths and going, yeah, the petrol light's on, it should be fine. You know,
Be right.
If you run out of petrol, you get out and walk. If you run out of gas underwater, it's a much bigger problem. Alright, competent and confident in applications of all diving components. Alright, risks and rewards. I'm going to say that yes, there are risks, but we learn to mitigate, judge, and make decisions that minimise and mitigate those risks. The rewards in technical diving are astounding. You get to visit stuff no one has been to, or a very select few have been to. So it's an extreme sport. It's obviously going to be complex. You know, when we put it in the context of recreational single tank diving, health issues can arrive. We may discover our own physiology is not suited to it. We may have a PFO. We may just suck a lot of nitrogen into our tissues and have to work with that. I'm going to say this, you know, a lot of these people that say, you know, I followed my computer and, you know, to the T, and why did I get banned? You know, so biological values do not submit to arithmetical laws. Your computer it's a mathematical program. So tech diving incidents are 20 times that of recreational diving.
Wow.
So, you know, you've got to take that into consideration.
It's more complex.
I have a love. Absolute passion.
If you've been tech diving long enough, we all have one thing in common. We've got dead friends. And that's the sad thing. But it teaches us. Every time there's an incident, an accident or a fatality, we learn more as long as that incident is shared in the community.
Yeah.
Complacency, I mean, there's no room for this in technical diving. If you're one of those divers who's a single tank diver, you know, you just throw your gear in the corner and then 6 weeks later you decide to go out for another dive, technical diving's not for you. Right? We put that in the bracket of tech recreational divers. Alright, they're kind of a little bit tech curious, like to push push limits, but you know what? I'm not going to do a course. I don't need that. All right? They're most always going to have an incident somewhere. Let's look at the positive side.
Yeah.
All right. So we've talked about the downside. The positive side is the opportunities for awe and amazing experiences are exhilarating. You can visit dive sites you've only seen in diving magazines.
Dreamed about.
Yeah. So this is one of the things about technical diving. You dream it and you think, you watch a video publication or you hear someone talking about their adventures on a particular dive site or a dive trip. So you live for dive trips because that's where we get our experience and learn the new dynamic of diving. We've got an elevated appreciation for diving. Our personal diving goals become reality slowly, and we develop as a diver. You become connected and fascinated with the diving community, and particularly the tech diving community. We're a very cohesive community, not like the recreational community, which is all over the place. But techies, we're usually a very honest and open group because we want to learn.
Have you back.
Yeah. Your new level of diving has sponsored some financial priorities. So I'm going to say this.
See you later.
Like the techie budget. It's
not cheap.
If you've only got recreational budget, then techie diving is going to send you broke. And you're going to cause some tears. And if you're in a relationship, you're going to have to choose between technical diving and your partner.
So true.
Sorry, I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
So true, Skoober.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Alright, a couple of pictures. If you've not been to try, there are these M92 tanks. This is one of them on the port deck of the Nippon Nauru.
Wow.
This is Danny again.
Star.
If you haven't got it already, I'm actually very privileged and a little bit proud that I've had the opportunity to train such a brilliant diver. I mean, I have every confidence that in terms of technical diving, and when he gets to the level of technical diving instructor, he will probably go beyond my knowledge and limits. This is the Emily, which is a flying boat in Truck Lagoon in, I think it's about 16 metres, something around about that. It's a 4-engine flying Japanese boat. All the engines, props are still intact.
Was an aeroplane.
The Kensho, I remembered. The Kensho, Maru, the engine room. And these were all very modern diesel vessels at that time. So technical diving, it's a growing trend. It comes from the recreational divers, obviously. And so what's the attraction? Why have we got this sudden leap in technical divers? Well, they want to explore and go further and deeper because there's much more to see. 70% of the planet is water, and that's just the surface. All right, so now we're plumbing the depths. We want to expand our underwater knowledge and experience, and that's not just personally, but that's collectively. In terms of scientific and research, we're still learning new things about the way we can venture further in equipment, the way physiology reacts.
New fish.
To increase safety and mitigate risks. So every time we go to these new depths and there's something that we can record or report that makes this diving level safer, we want to put that in the context of new diving. To understand research, diving physiology, a diving progression for those who wish to go beyond recreational limits, and just some of those things are side mount rebreather, horizon semi-closed rebreathers. There's a picture of me there in one of those.
Woo!
Or you go full CCR, which I've done recently, and I'm diving a JJ now.
The guy on the right looks pretty
Yeah,
crazy.
so, I mean, this guy here, this is a picture of Guy Garman, and he's attempting a 350 metre dive.
Wow.
He made it down there, he just didn't make it back alive.
Oh.
Yeah, so it was very much a one-way trip for him.
And needed supports.
Yeah. So he definitely needed, not a cheer squad, he needed someone to be the devil's advocate and say, hey Guy, you know, the last dive you did was 250 metres. May have went okay, but do you think you can now take another 100 metres on that without reviewing and looking at what the possibilities of things that may go wrong? Me on the horizon again. Some highlights in my own personal diving career. This is me, and we're hovering there at about 60 metres off the back of the Boga Reef in what we call the Cathedral or the Fishbowl, which is a beautiful area.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, for encounters with mola. Ben's company was the Tech Room. I hope, and I've got the support of the people in Bali and the people who knew Ben to start up the all-new Tech Room 2 in Toowoomba. This was me in the early days, and this was in your local dive site here, Kilsby's.
Wow.
Woohoo!
And this was the last time I saw Ben alive, and I was with Danny, and this is Danny and I on a brand new reef that Ben had discovered. The tabletop was at 26 metres, and then it disappeared on a shoulder. It was a seamount. Disappeared down to about 75 metres before it levelled out to a small shelf and then dropped into the abyss.
Wow.
And this is where Ben was last seen on September 30th, 2018, sorry.
Wow.
I want to talk a little bit about the technical diving compass. Now, a compass is something that we talk about for direction and finding not only where we want to go, but finding ourselves. So things about technical diving, it's very much mechanical, but it goes way beyond that. So we need to develop and maintain the subtle balance, control and management in melding equipment use and operation within the diving environment. So we need to be very fluid and almost auto in some of our skills. Obviously it's going to have a physiological impact on what we do and how we do it. So we need to maintain our physical well-being so we can be competent in performing the dives according to our training experience and ambition. Don't let our ambition take us beyond that. Ambition's a good thing, but it needs to be bridled.
Step by step.
Realistic.
I'm going to share some things very personal. My last 60 days in Bali, I have, because I wasn't there for the last 4 years due to this thing called COVID, I've noticed the subtle deterioration in my own physiology, and things hurt a bit more now, and you feel things more in. I feel things more in my aging mortal frame, so I've got to be a lot more careful. So my stops at the end of a technical dive are always padded, and I'll make sure if I've got extra gas, I'm going to use that, so I can look after what's left of this aging mortality.
Woo woo.
Psychological, I mean, this develops over time. This is about your self-talk and, having the correct mindset, So you maintain and you continue to evolve in your thought processes and your mindfulness. So you've got to be in the dive and you've got to plan it meticulously, but, almost like pre-live the dive through visualization techniques and that sort of thing.
Wow.
So we've got to develop those instinctive responses and cognitive processes that enhance safe boundaries. Allowing gradual purposeful understanding of our mental attitudes and aptitudes to where we want to go with our diving exploits and pursuits. So meld all that together, and sometimes it's just pulling back the reins a bit, particularly with because we're an aging group, us techies. Like the majority of technical divers now are 45 plus.
Mm-hmm.
Now this area, last area here, the spiritual thing. Now I don't know where you all are in the room, but you've got to have an understanding of your own personal, spiritual position in the cosmos. Maintaining communion and connection and intuition and consciousness. These all sound like, this new wave sort of spiritual cognitive stuff. But it's very important because in the end, we have to know within ourselves, why is it that we are doing what we do? It's important.
Love and passion.
Yeah, so
Love
it
and
has to
passion.
be something within us.
Absolutely.
And if you're a technical diver that is out to prove a point to someone, and it's a bit ego driven, it's probably not the right platform. This has to be something that you do because it's part of you, it's integral within. Okay, let's. Is tech diving for me? Well, that's a question you're all going to ask yourselves. It's not for everyone. We're a very small percentage of the diving community. It's not for everyone, and it shouldn't be the goal of every diver. I talk to a few people that, I'd like to give that a go. No, you don't give technical diving a go. It's either in you and you want to commit to it, and it's part of your, your own personal psychology.
Go and snorkel.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You can enjoy
Keep to
a
rec.
lifetime of snorkeling.
Keep it
And
recreational. It's fine.
Yeah, and the same, recreational diving.
Yeah.
You may never go beyond open water diver, and you can have all the best times in the world. And I can say, I have enjoyed dives that are no deeper than 8 or 10 metres.
Yep.
And I've had a great time. So what's involved in technical training? Well, obviously there's study, application, and we meter that with achievement and rewards. You might want to start with a TDI intro to tech or some other agency, a SIMAC course, or you may go straight to TDI ANDP or something similar. You need to start engaging your brain and read some real diving accounts. Like I've talked about David Shaw, Guy Garman, The Last Dive. These are all great reads. Setting the Hook. This guy really surprised me. He was 18 years old. He was diving down to 70 metres on air. He was dragging probably 150 kilogram anchor across the sand 40 or 50 metres to hook it into a wreck. So he'd be pulling the whole boat.
Damn.
And yet he didn't get narcosis, too much, I imagine. And still come up. And he did that trip after trip on the Andrew Doria. Raising the Dead is the Dave Shaw story. The Technical Diver by Gary Gentile, one of the best reads I have had in terms of wreck penetration and the discipline and the attitudes of technical diving. Okay, so by now you're either quite a lot intrigued or, I've kind of like frightened you off. But
Or hell
maybe
no.
both. But I'll pretext that with this. So no diver more values their training and experience when they can confidently and comfortably explore a new dive site previously beyond their training or limits. All right. And return safely, I say that safely, to the surface, exhilarated and amazed about the content and context of a well-planned and well-executed technical dive. And that's what it's about. That's where the buzz comes from.
It comes from
Woohoo.
coaching as well.
Yeah.
Teaching.
So, yeah, a bit of a plug for me. Hi, I'm Skoober Steve from Tec Diving Bali. I'm going to be there for the next 60 days, starting this Saturday, the September the 2nd. I'll take questions, but you know what? We're probably going to end the forum now, so we can go and have a drink and something to eat. Is that good?
Go
All right.
Skoober Steve.
Woohoo.
Happy
Go
diving,
Skoober
everyone. Take care.
Go Skoober
See
Steve.
ya.
Go Skoober Steve.